When the news first reached billionaire businessman Adrian Cole that his maid, Elena, had been found dead near the old railway bridge, he felt a strange tightness in his chest, a feeling he couldn't quite identify, but one that left him restless for days. Elena had only worked for him for 7 months, but in that short time she had become more than just another employee in his mansion. She was the reason his young son, Jacob, had started smiling again after the loss of his mother. Elena had a kindness that wrapped itself around people like sunlight, a voice so gentle that Jacob fell asleep the moment she sang to him, and a heart so brave she once stepped between Jacob and a swarm of bees without thinking twice. So when the police declared her death an accident, claiming she slipped while crossing the abandoned tracks, Adrian's instincts screamed that something was terribly wrong. He couldn't explain why the details didn't add up, why her body had no dirt on her palms, why the rope marks on her wrist were dismissed as, possibly from her work, or why her necklace, a simple silver pendant Jacob had gifted her, was missing. Grief tugged at him, but suspicion gnawed harder, and the more he tried to accept the report, the more his heart refused to believe it. Jacob cried for days, asking why Elena hadn't come to tuck him in, and every time Adrian tried to explain, his voice cracked. Something in their home, something in their hearts, felt unfinished, as though Elena was calling to them from somewhere in the shadows, begging not to be forgotten. And my dear viewers, if you're already feeling the tension rising, make sure to subscribe now, because this story is about to take a turn no one could see coming. Adrian visited the bridge multiple times, hoping the cold air and rusted metal would give him clarity, but each time he stood there, he felt a chill crawl down his spine. The report said Elena died at 11:47 p.m., yet a truck driver who frequently passed the area insisted he'd seen a black SUV parked near the tracks around that time. Strangely, the police dismissed the claim. Adrian couldn't. He began reviewing his own household security footage from that night and noticed something bizarre. Elena left the mansion at 10:55 p.m., but she wasn't alone. A figure in a hood followed her from the shadows, sticking close until both disappeared past the boundary of the cameras. Adrian's heart thudded painfully as he rewound the footage again and again. He zoomed in, sharpened the frame, and though the face was partially hidden, the posture, the build, the walk, it matched someone he knew. Someone he trusted. Damien, his personal driver. Adrian confronted him the next morning, and the man nervously insisted he was home all night. But his eyes darted, his hands trembled, and something in his tone felt rehearsed. Adrian didn't argue, he simply fired him on the spot. But firing Damien didn't calm his instincts. If anything, it amplified a truth that whispered louder every hour: Elena did not die by accident. She was taken. And if the tracks didn't kill her, then where was she now? That night, Jacob woke up screaming, saying he heard Elena calling his name. Adrian held him, rubbing his back gently, but deep inside he was shaken. Children sense things adults often ignored. In Jacob's shaking voice, Adrian heard something unsettling, something that pulled him deeper into the mystery. He decided, once and for all, to investigate everything himself, not as a billionaire with influence, not as a grieving employer, but as a father determined to give his son the truth. And as the story deepens, dear viewers, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the heart-stopping moments that keep families like Adrian's fighting for justice. Adrian began retracing Elena's last steps. He visited the town she grew up in, its streets humble and quiet, its people speaking fondly of her. That was where he discovered her secret, a secret she'd never told anyone at the mansion. Elena had been sending most of her salary to support her sick mother, and recently, she'd confronted a local moneylender who'd been harassing her family. The man had a history of using violence, and he owned a black SUV. Adrian visited the man, pretending to inquire about unrelated business, but his sharp gaze caught the panic in the lender's eyes the moment Elena's name slipped into the conversation. The lender dismissed him quickly, but as Adrian walked out, he glanced back and saw the man making a phone call, whispering urgently. Adrian knew then, he was getting too close to the truth point. 2 nights later, Adrian received an anonymous message with a single line: "Stop digging or Jacob will be next." His blood ran cold. His fists clenched tightly. Whoever took Elena was watching him. Watching his son. watching every move. But that didn't stop him, it fueled him. He doubled security at home, kept Jacob close, and secretly continued the investigation, determined to uncover the truth even if it meant putting himself in danger. Because Elena wasn't just a maid. She was family. She had protected Jacob with her life. Now it was his turn to protect hers. Following a hunch, Adrian visited one of the abandoned warehouses near the tracks. Old crates, rusty chains, and the smell of damp despair filled the space. Something felt off, as though the silence itself held a secret. Then, just as he turned to leave, he heard it, a faint thud. A muffled cry. He froze. Heart pounding, he followed the sound to a locked steel door. With trembling hands, he pried it open using a metal bar. And there, lying weakly on the floor, bruised, and barely conscious, was Elena. Alive. Her breath came out in ragged whispers, her lips cracked, her arms bearing rope burns. Adrian fell to his knees, tears burning his eyes as he held her gently, whispering, you're safe now." But Elena, shaking violently, managed to choke out words that made his blood turn to ice. "Damien, he worked for them, they wanted Jacob. I fought them. I escaped, they chased me. I fell near the tracks, they thought I died, they left me here." Her voice broke, tears streaming down her face. Adrian held her closer, vowing to never let her out of his sight again. He immediately called emergency services and the police, and within minutes the warehouse filled with flashing lights. Elena was rushed to the hospital, Jacob crying with relief when he finally saw her alive. But the police investigation that followed blew the entire case open. Damien had been working with the moneylender for months, feeding him details about the Millionaire's schedule, his mansion, and his son. Elena had discovered their plan to kidnap Jacob for ransom, and in trying to warn the authorities she became the target instead. They tried to kill her, but when they assumed she fell onto the tracks and died, they staged the entire scene as an accident and hid her body in the warehouse, planning to move her later. Adrian used every influence he had to ensure Damien and his accomplices were arrested. The court sentenced them to life in prison, and justice was finally served. But for Adrian, the real victory wasn't revenge, it was bringing Elena home. He hired the best doctors to treat her, gave her a room inside the mansion with round-the-clock care, and never let her feel like a mere employee again. Jacob refused to sleep without hearing one of her gentle songs, and every time she held his hand, Adrian silently thanked the universe for giving them a second chance. As Elena healed, Adrian realized something else too, something he had been ignoring for months. He didn't just admire her kindness. He didn't just respect her bravery. He cared for her deeply. But he never voiced it, not wanting to pressure her during her recovery. Yet one evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the room in orange gold, Elena looked up at him and said softly, "You saved my life, but more than that, you believed in me when no one else did." Adrian swallowed hard, emotion thick in his throat, and replied, "You saved my son, you saved me, Elena. I will always believe in you." From that day on, the mansion felt whole again. Jacob laughed freely, Elena walked with strength in her steps, and Adrian found a warmth in his home he thought he'd lost forever. And dear viewers, if stories like this, stories of courage, loyalty, mystery, and second chances, touch your heart, then make sure to smash that subscribe button. Because more life-changing stories are coming your way, and you won't want to miss even one of them.